Welcome to ESVN, the Emma Sports Vigeland Network show. My name is Emma Vigeland, and we are back, folks. We had a week off, but we're back. And you know what to do. You can reward us by subscribing, youtube.com/ESVN show. Put on push notifications. Rate us 5 stars wherever you're listening to or watching this. I don't know if you can do so on a video platform, but hey, you might as well try. Comment 5 stars below. How about that? And you can IM us by becoming a member at jointhemajorityreport.com. We're an offshoot of our day job, so we still use all of that infrastructure just to have some fun, shoot the shit, talk sports, and some politics as well. Say hello to Bradley Alsop, please.
Hello, everyone. I have to make a confession.
Oh gosh,
Emma is lying about the reason that we were off last Monday, and it's because we were experiencing what was almost what I would refer to as irreconcilable creative differences, but we've resolved them.
Okay. Would you like to elaborate on this?
No.
No. Okay.
The NDAs we signed don't allow me to do so, and you know that.
I do know that
so it's
because we
interesting
were in
that you
such
asked me to
serious.
elaborate.
Well, I wanted you to break it so I could take out that legal action against you.
Yeah, it was because I was still smarting from you saying that the Jets were not playoff contenders in your rankings.
Oh yes, I will be continuing making that. And
now
case.
now I'm incurring legal liability because I broke my NDA to tell you all this.
Yeah. So, folks, I don't know if you guys have been paying attention, but the news in the politics world has been quite fast moving. So after Biden dropped out on Monday, we just had way too much work, and so we apologize for not bringing you the show. But oh my God, it's still insane. But we have to bring you some Olympics coverage, which we will do shortly. Let's talk about the Olympics so far. The Olympics, I have a lot of problems with in terms of the way that it's structured. There's a reason that the Olympics were forced to announce 2 host cities at the exact same time because no one seems to want to host the Olympics because they keep expanding the number of games. There needs to be all this new construction for facilities, and when you basically bid these events to different countries, you have an example of what happened with FIFA and Qatar, which was a pretty nakedly corrupt deal, and a lot of unpaid laborers died in the makings of those facilities in the extreme heat because Qatar didn't have all of the stadiums, all the places for people to stay, all that kind of stuff, the infrastructure that's necessary to host this massive event. And the Olympics keeps expanding games. So Paris and the United States were chosen at the same time as back-to-back recipients of the 2024 and 2028 Olympics, in part because the Olympics Committee and the IOC were afraid that someone was going to back out after what happened in after Paris, right? After there will undoubtedly be logistical issues, protests, things like that. So they locked in the United States, Los Angeles, really, and Paris as the host of the next Olympic Games because, like, let's be real, this is if they're going to keep expanding the games and the number of different sports that they can do there. And I know, like, the NFL is trying to angle for flag football, and that's how they're trying to expand the sport by having women participate in it as well. But the more sports that they add, the more they're going to need to facilities that they're going to need. So they're going to need to do it in large cities going forward. So and
if I just might add to
yes.
the big city idea too, is because it's like the other things we've seen about with these Olympics is kind of that they ultimately, the unique construction that sometimes happens in these places ultimately becomes almost vestigial in the sense that it becomes useless after it happens.
Yeah.
The
Same thing with Qatar in the World Cup.
The infrastructure becomes so that it's not actually being utilized for anything. So it is taking up an enormous amount of public space at the expense of a very, very grossly underpaid or even potentially fully unpaid labor force to create and establish these structures that ultimately don't do really anything other than provide for the Olympics after the Olympics is gone.
Yeah, and it's caused displacement. We infamously in Brazil, the Olympics did that as well. Unhoused people bear the brunt of this. There's also environmental concerns when you have to construct these kinds of facilities. And in Paris, there has been the issue of the fact that the hijab and headdresses are banned for French female athletes, including for one of their best female basketball players, unable to participate due to the racism in France at this moment. So, let alone the fact that the Olympics have a deep history of kind of being drawn along Cold War lines. With all of that said, the new kind of politics of the Olympics, obviously, this time around, is the fact that Israel is participating. Israel is committing a genocide as we speak, and so obviously there are a lot of issues with the fact that they have athletes in the games. Now, this story is causing some confusion here, but the reality is this was an active protest, even though I think a lot of people are trying to downplay it. This Algerian athlete failed a weigh-in potentially on purpose. I would say it's fair to assume it could be on purpose. But if we could just zoom in a little. Yeah. May have failed this weigh-in on purpose in order to not face an Israeli opponent. So this is a judo player who goes by Driss Massoud, I guess is his name. Apologies if I messed it up. Or it's Massoud Roudan Driss. I apologize, I mixed up the name.
Yeah, I wonder. It's interesting because it could be either, sometimes certain people of certain ethnicities or nationalities, in their language, the first name sometimes it goes behind the last name, but I'm not sure if that's the case in Algeria. But it both sound kind of like names.
Right.
Any Algerians sound off in the comments if I'm completely wrong.
So let's scroll down so we can read this a bit. Here we go. Judo's governing body is to investigate why Algeria's Massoud Roudan Driss failed the weigh-in for his under 73 kilogram bout with Israel's Tohar Boutbol at the Paris Olympics, saying athletes can become, quote, victims of broader political disputes. Again, this is the Times of Israel and how they're framing it. The International Judo Federation said Driss arrived for the weight control session on Sunday 10 minutes before the deadline and was found to be 400 grams over the allowed weight to compete on Monday. The head of Israel's Olympic Committee, Yael Arad, branded it a disgrace and called for the North African delegation to be punished. Algerian media and the delegation sponsor hailed Driss. Now, if we could scroll down a bit. Okay, so he failed his weigh-in. Now, usually they have their own scales, so they determine this beforehand to make sure that, like, for wrestlers or for judo players or whatever, people who are competing, it's has to be purposeful, really. I think if you're going into a weigh-in, the official one, with knowing that you're slightly overweight, especially when in Algeria athletes have a history of showing opposition to Israel as it relates to the Olympic Games. Can we keep scrolling down a bit here? They declined to comment, but this has happened before. Yeah, there has been an expectation in the run-up that Driss would pull out, given that Algeria does not recognize Israel. However, had he withdrawn from the match outright due to political reasons, the implications could have been far-reaching, and he could have been banned from future competitions by the International Olympic Committee and the IJF. In 2021, another Algerian, Fethi Nourine, withdrew from the Tokyo Olympics in order to avoid a potential fight against Boutbol in the second round. he was then handed a 10-year ban by the IJF. So previously, an Algerian player had tried to avoid fighting against another Israeli, and they were banned. So this guy comes in, weighs in slightly over, and is disqualified. When, as I mentioned, it would stand to reason that that they have their own scales to weigh their athletes before they go into the official weigh-in. So this could have been a way to circumvent the system. Sudan's Mohamed Abrasoul then did not show up to face Bothball in the Tokyo round of the 32 bout, despite weighing in earlier. Dries is a victim of the system. I think these guys, the coach, the delegation, have to be punished. Arad, a 1992 Barcelona Games silver medalist, said. So that's an Israeli speaking there. So I think that's pretty clear in terms of what that act was about. It was really a way to protest without getting fully banned from the Olympic Committee. And there were other examples of Israel getting this cold welcome, including during the opening ceremonies, which took place on the Seine on boats. There's some pretty badass imagery of LeBron James holding up the American flag on the boat with the rest of the delegation, which is massive. The United States has huge advantages because of the wealth of the country. They were able to field so many athletes in the Olympic Games. Another reason a lot of this is really tilted towards Western white countries in many ways. But regardless, this was some of the reactions from the crowd in the rain, and you can hear this, boos, as the Israeli delegation makes its way down the Seine. So you could hear that. Now, let's go to the match that Israel had with Paraguay, I believe. This might have been one of their earlier matches in the round. Yes, Paraguay. Paraguay did win 4-2. This is the reaction from the crowd to the Israeli national anthem.
Now, if you can, please get standing for the national anthem of Israel.
Palestinian flags there for people who are listening. Blues. Gosh, their national anthem is kind of, depressing sounding, rightfully so. All right, so those were some of the Palestinian flags, and then in a later match, Israel was facing off. Who was it? Bali? Oh, Mali.
So
Mali.
the sequencing actually
Mali.
now that we've because I wanted to get to the bottom of the sequencing because we'd play the clip on the majority board as well, is that the Mali match was actually a few days before. I think it was one of the earlier qualifiers, and then the Paraguay match between Israel and Paraguay was yesterday, or it was this past weekend. So the Mali match, where the clip I think we're going to play is from a few days before the Paraguay match,
right?
Just to be clear.
Okay, gotcha. This was a hilarious interaction with some random fan wearing a Brazil jersey, and he's being interviewed just about the match between Israel and Mali. The interviewer just wants to ask his thoughts about the match, about the players. But these rabid Israel fans can't help but butt themselves in and try to take over and make sure they're monitoring that there's nothing bad being said about the country that's doing a genocide. And look how quickly they radicalized this kid.
And what do you think about the game?
I thought it was a good game. I thought in the beginning Israel was better, but now Mali is is destroying them, I think. Israel is not bad. Israel is not bad, but I think Mali is going to destroy them today. No, I'm just talking about football. I'm just talking about football.
The best, no politic here. Okay?
Free Palestine! Free Palestine! Free Palestine! Free Palestine!
Look at those natives to the Middle East over there. I mean, wow. Look at them. Can't you just tell that Palestine was their native land? That blonde lady with her solo cup, or whatever the hell that is. That is amazing. Yeah, that's that should be the response when you have people screaming about how Israel is righteous as they kill. There was a letter signed by doctors that they're basically using a figure in the high 90 thousands, near 100,000 Palestinians dead, because the official total, they've killed all the record keepers. So
this is I think a well-worn paradigm that we see between it. In this case, it is between, usually when you see this dynamic play out, it's usually between two interested parties, i.e. like this is usually what we see sometimes with cable news interviews or things like that, or other exchanges like this, maybe sometimes more public than a cable news interview, sometimes not, but usually broadly between like a one party and a reactionary party. In particular, though, we see this type of dynamic with Zionists in discourse, either with someone over on cable news or with someone like this person who is a completely disinterested party who was literally being asked about, like, what did you think of the soccer game so far?
Yes,
is like
at halftime
is like essentially kind of do something somewhat antagonistic and confrontational, then retreat as if you were the as if they are the aggrieved party.
Yeah.
And then once they have fully then assumed the role of the aggrieved party, start like either violently or verbally like abusing the person as to whoever that they were speaking to in the beginning, when they were literally trying to like actually receive sympathy from them or like or apology from them in the beginning. It's like, oh no, you need to apologize to us. Oh, you're not going to apologize to us? Actually, fuck you.
Yeah.
You piece of shit.
Yeah, right.
Like, and it's what I think. I'm trying to remember if this was David Graeber or somebody else, but who quoted this term. But it's what some people would call, I would say, cry bullying. Mm-hmm. Which is like somehow being the aggressor while also thinking that being the aggressor and the aggrieved at the same time.
Yeah.
That you were kind of the one making it so that something conflictual does happen, but at the same time you were also the victim of said circumstance.
I mean, that's every conservative in every situation, even
100%,
domestically.
right.
Which is often like, look what you made me do. Look what you made me do.
It's like Vivek Ramaswamy. He tweeted over the weekend being like, knock it off. Stop calling us weird. It's offensive. There are a lot of people who share our beliefs. Now it's like, oh, right. So, Hillary Clinton is a basement-dwelling pedophile,
right.
But also don't call us weird because it makes me sad.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
You're the ones, when we're saying that John Podesta is drinking the blood of babies and Obama was born from
for
Kenya.
For the adrenochrome.
Yeah, how dare you call us weird? How dare you say our politics may be toxic to the culture?
Would it be the worst thing if someone went to investigate that? Oh wait, somebody did with a weapon.
Yeah,
and like, but somehow calling people weird, that's the incitement. That's
exactly.
Like the shot across the bow that's inappropriate.
Totally. Well, I'm happy to see that Israel is getting such a cold reception, and that there are really brave people standing up to them, and that the crowd is against them as well. In terms of actual Olympic results, we're still pretty early on, but Team France, Team USA doing the best so far. The United States is the largest delegation, and I think France, they each have nearly 600 athletes as a member of their Olympic team, which is just like, it just goes to show how much of an advantage they have in terms of numbers. And the Palestinian delegation, recognized by the IOF, which was beautiful to see, has, I don't know, a half dozen, maybe a little bit more representatives, and they came down the Seine to applause. There was this the flag bearer. This well, let's watch this here. This is the differences between we played the Israeli delegation on the Seine. This is the Palestinian flags here. Hear any anchor say the word Palestine because they pretend Palestine isn't a real place, but let alone it being Mike Tirico. Now, let's also, we didn't get a good shot of this, but this was a, poetic, beautiful, intricate shirt, even though it's horribly sad. The flag bearer Wasim Abu Sal wore this shirt with bombs and warplanes sewn onto it, falling from the sky upon, and you can kind of see in near where his hand is, there is a child or a person there sleeping. And you have the olive branch. I think that may be blood coming from it on the shirt as well, symbolizing the ongoing genocide in Gaza. So, as the world continues to turn, there are many people who will not forget about Palestine. We're among them, and it's beautiful to see at least some representation there. I know that Israel would like them to be stamped out, unless lets us, to pretend that Palestine is not a real place, but we know that Palestine is a very real place with a very real people and a proud people that will not go quietly.
And it's and this is, it's interesting to talk about this stuff in the context of the Olympics, because the Olympics, similarly to that of like the World Cup or any sort of, regional soccer tournament or something, not in sports, but in culture, like Eurovision, the song contest, all of these things, despite ostensibly obviously being it's basically, not to be such an absolute nerd and to even reference anything J.K. Rowling related, I apologize in advance, but it's like our own like Triwizard tournaments, like are basically like here are our delegations from our countries, like look how amazing they are, look at all of their
I'm sure
talent.
she based it off the Olympics.
Yeah, it's like look at all of our talents and our skills, but it's also like, when you're representing a country, you don't just represent like, oh my God, look at this amazing fencer. You also represent like, oh my God, what is that government doing? Not only touting their incredible athletes, but with taxpayer money, because the IOC goes through the federal government in the United States, the International Olympic Committee. What else are we doing with that money?
Yeah.
And Tarico, who's the stalwart outside of like Bob Costas, the Olympic, commentator for NBC. You can even hear somewhat of a genuine, like, oh, right, Palestine has an Olympic delegation despite literally not being recognized by any other international governing body for sovereignty or for governing themselves. Kind of weird, but I guess they have a fencer or, maybe a skateboarder or something. I mean, maybe it's not as easy to do amidst all the rubble now, but I think it's just fascinating to me to see kind of like someone who I'm so accustomed to, like, calling football games, having to like literally juggle within the context of like 9 to 12 words, being like, Palestine is here, let's not talk about it any more than we have to.
Right. And do people realize that Russia is not allowed to participate in these Olympic Games, but Israel is? Can you explain that to me? Well, we can't explain that. It's because the Olympics are an arm of Western power, and it's about what serves the propagandistic interests of the United States. And this is not to say that Russia's offensive illegal war in Ukraine is just. It's anything but. But talking about Ukraine and not talking about Palestine really shows where your biases lie. And that is the reality of the situation.
And it goes to show you too that, it's very clear, especially in this context as well. And to your point, Emma, exactly about, the number of, extra political, and what I mean by that is like outside of just capital P politics, both in the U.S. and across the world, how Russia, and by Russia I mean Russian athletes, people who I would not, unless there's other evidence that people can point me towards, are not actively involved in Vladimir Putin's war efforts in Ukraine, being either not allowed to represent their country or being actively disallowed from even participating in the Olympics because of the war effort in Ukraine. The reason that I bring that up is because it also goes to show you, even in the context, which is a little bit of a microcosm of the Olympics, how atrocities and tragedies around the world are handled conditionally by state actors. And by that I mean there's no recourse for Israel in the context of the Olympics. They're treated as if they are treated as if they might be Belgium or something like that. It's just completely anodyne, nothing going on there. There's a little bit of surprise, like, oh my God, Palestine's here, but not anything really. They said conflict. Good job. So either and then Russia, as we were talking about with the restrictions that they're under, it's a few different reactions that are available. You either ignore the atrocity entirely, Palestine, sort basically, unless kind of being dragged, kicking and screaming to acknowledge it. You gloss over it entirely in terms of Israel, or you don't think it, or you punish the ones that it's okay to punish, or you feel like it's incumbent upon you to punish Russia, or you just don't pay attention whatsoever and ignore it entirely, and that's kind of the Yemen, Sudan sort of pile where it's happening, but. Where is that?
But we have no clear, there's no clear person we can.
We wouldn't
demonize.
send troops there publicly to do anything.
We do that
good.
quietly.
Yeah, and sort of in terms of like nation building, not like kind of like let's help them get them food. Like,
yeah,
no,
right.
like,
no.
So it's just kind of incredible to see this on the world stage of something that's like silly enough to be like, oh look, it's like the Greco-Roman wrestler from this country, but it's like even those types of the choices of which countries are allowed to compete. And B, everything around them. It does factor into what we're watching. It just does.
I mean, they don't let a real country like Russia compete, but they do let a fake country like Israel compete. So there is that. So speaking of the Olympics, we'll just quickly run through some of the results so far. I watched a bit of the swimming over the weekend. That's been really exciting. I mean, in terms of the women's swimming, it's really a race between Australia and the United States for who has the best kind of roster there. And in the 400-meter freestyle, which was very exciting, Australia's Ariane Titmus was the one who won, and Katie Ledecky ended up getting the bronze. Canada's Summer McIntosh got the silver. The American Gretchen Walsh set an Olympic record in the 100-meter butterfly in the semifinals. Still remains to be seen if she will be able to get a medal. I mean, I'd imagine, since she also, I think, set a world record at another competition, if I'm not mistaken, she should be able to get the gold if she's able to swim like that. But set an Olympic record in the 100-meter butterfly in the semifinals. The U.S. women's national team had a romping, galloping victory over Germany in soccer, a 4-1 victory. The U.S. men's national team has a bit of... are they playing Guinea right now, or is that on Tuesday? I think it's on Tuesday. Yes, it's on Tuesday. So tomorrow, the United States, it'll be determined if they're able to advance out of the group stage because they lost 3-0 to France, but then they won 4-1 against New Zealand. So currently they're in second place in Group A. They have to defeat Guinea in order to get out of the group stage. That will be something to watch. In terms of gymnastics, the U.S. men's gymnastics team got the bronze, which is a good, successful result for them, specifically compared to the women's. It's the first time that they've won a medal in men's gymnastics since 2008. Japan won the gold. I think China got the silver in that instance. They've been much more dominant in that particular sport for men's gymnastics. And then Simone Biles is obviously the big name for the women's gymnastics team, one of the greatest athletes to come out of the United States, one of the greatest athletes ever as a gymnast. She had a phenomenal beam routine the other day, yesterday, I guess. But she tweaked her calf during the qualifying warm-up, so we'll have to see, because the women's team final is Tuesday. If she says she should be fine, we'll see. I mean, I can't even imagine. Like, I saw a swimmer, I forget who it was, got COVID before one of their big medal games. It's just like, oh my God, if you've been training this long, I don't understand how you can deal with that. But Biles at least has a lot of medals and accolades, but she tweaked her calf. And they ended up cutting off the team, making the cutoffs or the selections for who's going to participate in the women's team final round. Jade Carey had a really bad qualifying round over the weekend. She fell and she's been demoted, so she will not compete in the floor exercise. Lee is going to be the gymnast that competes in the floor exercise, and that will be tomorrow. So we have on Tuesday, both the U.S. men's national soccer team determining if they get out of the qualifying round, and also the women's final for gymnastics tomorrow on Tuesday. For men's basketball, it was pretty astonishing to see this lineup. Kevin Durant came off the bench, made every shot he took. Well, he's 8 for 8.
Yeah, like he literally did not miss a shot.
Did not miss one shot. 23 points. LeBron James started in that game. He's been kind of the anchor, of course, for the game for the U.S. Men's basketball team. He had 21 points, 9 assists, 7 rebounds. KD went nuclear early on. Steve Kerr subbed in Anthony Davis for Joel Embiid, or subbed out Joel Embiid, I should say. AD came in, and that's when the team kind of came together. So the United States overall at this point is 144-6 in the history of the Olympics. The men's team, and of course the women's are phenomenal. I think are they playing right now? Women's basketball?
Yes, it seems as it looks like they're playing right now because I'm getting a few updates from some of the basketball people I follow. 1 second, I had something right here. I'm pretty sure.
Oh, El Canipsion says Katie did finish 8 for 9. Oh. Did he? Because I saw 8 for 8 everywhere else. I'm not sure about that, El Canipsion. Maybe you're right, but I don't really know if it takes away.
Oh no, it definitely doesn't. I don't think even if he missed one shot.
Yeah, I don't care. By the way, God bless Steve Kerr for benching Jason Tatum.
And even that it became its own little controversy.
Oh my God, Bill Simmons,
despite being an NBA champion,
Bill Simmons is very upset that Jason Tatum is not starting.
And Kerr had to Steve Kerr had to do damage control. I felt like an idiot not playing him. I'm like, it's
sure,
it's probably okay.
It's probably okay. He's playing his guys. He's playing his buddy Steph Curry as a starter, and what the starters were Steph Curry, LeBron, Drew Holiday, which is good job for them getting a guard that is going to be a good defender. Embiid started. Then who else started? Steph, Drew, LeBron, Embiid. Who was
was it Derek? I don't think Derek White started though, right? Or did he? He was playing a decent amount of the game.
I forget.
Yeah, I don't know who the fifth starter was actually though.
Was it Devin Booker?
Oh yes, if it would probably be Devin Booker if I'm
probably
not
yeah.
mistaken,
They all have different numbers. It's a little confusing. Anyway, so yes, that was to be expected. We shall see as the United States advances. But what's happening with the women's as we speak?
YouTube chat is saying W. Bazile here is saying that the women are playing. They're up on Japan by 30, so they're dominating. Steve Jones Jr., one of my favorite basketball follows for both men's and women's basketball. He co-hosts the Dunker Spot podcast. Team USA, 39 made field goals, 33 assists, 13 from Chelsea Gray.
Oh gosh.
So they're doing all right. They're hanging in there against Japan.
Don't want to make predictions, but I think they might be in competition for the gold.
Yeah, seriously. No, too early to tell, but I also just wanted to highlight. I think you may have mentioned it, but Caleb Dreesen, the swimmer for the U.S., he was part of the relay team that won gold, which is for swimming, which is a good early victory for the swimming delegation from the U.S. And then just these two weird things that I don't know if you saw this at Argentina after a very very long video review. The game was essentially paused for 2 hours. Because not only was there an extraordinarily lengthy video review for a penalty, also it was making it so that the fans were going crazy, so they had to almost do a 2-hour long reset based off of the replay decision as well as the angst in the crowd, and then also the Canada women's team soccer coach Bev Priestman, I believe is her name. She had to issue an apology, and the team was deducted 6 points and banned for a year after 2 of her assistants were caught using drones to spy on New Zealand's practices before their opening game Wednesday.
That is pretty blatant.
Isn't that wild to have a little Spygate going on at the Olympics?
Because Spygate was, let's not forget, weren't the Jets recording the Patriots practice first, but then the Patriots got caught recording the Jets.
Right.
That was retaliatory
from Belichick or
that
whoever.
The Jets started. Yeah. I mean, not to be a clown on the Jets a little bit.
No shock to me, I don't think.
I don't care about Spygate as much as I cared about Deflategate, because that was Brady covering it up and destroying his phone. And also, it was clearly also why it's clear why I cared more about Deflategate was because it was such an insanely over the top aggressive attempt by Brady himself, and Belichick is not a kind of guy who's going to know how inflated the footballs are that the quarterback wants to throw. That was a Brady related cheating scandal, part of why I hate him.
And it sort of became used in a way of being Brady.
I'm an
Brady
underdog.
Yeah, Brady is now after this on like a redemptive arc, which is like I don't think anyone really needs to see Tom Brady as being on a redemptive arc after this
I need
happening
a
after
redemptive-
4 of his Super Bowls.
Yeah. I need a redemptive arc by besmirching El Conipcion. You were right. He missed a shot in the second half.
Our fault.
He was 8
Our
for
fault,
9.
El
My
Conipcion.
bad. El Conipcion also
apologize.
writes in Team Serbia versus the United States. Jokic on was plus minus 0 off minus 26 when Jokic was on the floor. So that's a pretty bad differential.
Even a team with Nikola Jokic, if they are that untalented, can't do a whole lot. Even if he's
Exactly.
literally keeping them above water at the breaking point of above water, he can only keep them at even, and they're
Yeah.
horrible when he's not playing.
And then in tennis, Djokovic beat Nadal. They're old friends in singles. Coco Gauff advanced for the United States, as did American Emma Navarro. So 2 Americans have advanced in the women's. We will be monitoring all of that. Now, let's start to get excited for football, okay? I want to talk about this because the finale is tomorrow, I guess, of Hard Knocks, which will be the draft. And I want to know what you think. You didn't watch the last episode, but I feel like you could probably get the gist. What have you thought of off-season Hard Knocks with Joe Shane? Or my fiance likes to mess with me and say Joe Shone, and then because he says that's how it's spelled, it looks like Shone. And I say, but when you keep saying that over and over as a gag, it messes me up every time I'm about to say his name. So quit it.
It's enough.
Quit it. So Shane. Shane, he's been okay. So first of all, I don't know if I like him more after this series. I think I really like him and Dable together. I really hope Dable's not on the hot seat, even if they underperform this year. Like, it's odd to me because I was thinking about this yesterday. No one ever says Kevin O'Connell's on the hot seat, right? But Kevin O'Connell, I think, got hired the same year as Dable and Shane and lost in his first year in the playoffs to Dable and Daniel Jones. Then the next year also didn't make the playoffs like the Giants, the Vikings did. But Dable's on the hot seat and not Kevin O'Connell? I don't get that.
I almost think, and I don't even think it's undeserved. I just think the last year or two, he's almost been getting a little bit of like McVay Wunderkind sheen.
Yes.
Of like just the fact that he's kind of like this young.
I don't want him to be fired. I think he's
right.
great, but Dable shouldn't be fired either. They need more of a leash with him.
Whereas Dable, as is very much evidenced by watching Hard Knocks, is actually like. He almost has like Melissa McCarthy in Bridesmaids energy.
He does.
Like he's very just much like I'm a big tough motherfucker. I'll say whatever I want and like I'm gonna walk into your office without basically knocking and just be like, "What are we doing right now?
Okay, but
tell me everything."
This is the Giants' way, though.
Yeah, no,
this
I love it.
This is the team of Bill Parcells. This is the team of Tom Coughlin. Hard-nosed guys who are difficult at times to work for, but who have incredible football knowledge and who push their players. I like Dable a lot. I think that him taking back play calling duties will be really good. But it is interesting how much they showed. I mean, they made Joe Shane the main character. Again, he just seems like a competent football executive. That's all I can ask of him. What do you make of John Mara skulking around in the hallways and saying, like, obsessing about them losing Saquon? I'm so glad they let Saquon walk into free agency. That's the one thing. You could see Shane never wanted Saquon back after he turned away apparently that deal worth $15 million in the middle of the season.
Before I address the Mara thing, I just want like in terms of kind of the archetypes I feel like everyone's fitting in is like you can tell Shane is like what I feel like it seems as if he is a genuinely personally like decent guy. But you can tell under the surface is like the end of the football mania that he has in the sense of like he doesn't show it very, very loudly, but you can tell kind of when he feels like he's under pressure or like when he feels like he needs to make a decision. And just the fact that even when he's taking calls, he's like watching film while he's on the phone. Well, I think
all of these guys are like that. One, he fleeced his buddy
Dan Morgan, the
Morgan
Panthers,
over there
GM for sure.
With they were starting off talking about first rounders, and you just see
when
how
it went to 2-7, and even when he wanted to throw the 7th round pick, Shane was like, "No!"
And how I found it really definitely nerve-wracking. I could get into his head a bit when he was trying to get that deal done for Brian Burns, but all free agency had kicked off. So it the options that they had considered as plans B and C and D move away from you as you're attempting to pursue and get the best deal on a trade. You have to probably have some inherent trust, and he's buddies, close friends with Morgan.
Yeah.
So that's part of it. But yeah, I mean, I think John Mara comes off as too involved, which is what we know.
Certainly, yeah.
I mean,
the fact that he would just walk in, amble, and just be like,
he looks like the fucking Grim Reaper.
yeah, he just
would
amble and just be like, any news on Saquon?
Yeah, okay. He's our most popular player. Cool. By dumb fans. Dumb fans think he's the best player on the
And
team.
also,
Andrew
unfortunately-
Thomas is the best player on the team, or Dexter Lawrence. Those are okay. I'm sorry. Like in terms,
name them.
I'm going to name all players that are more valuable to this team than Saquon Barkley at this point. Dexter Lawrence, Kayvon Thibodeau, who I don't even think is that good of a pass rusher, but still as good. I think he's a good pass rusher, not a superstar. Still more valuable than Saquon. Brian Burns, superstar pass rusher, star pass rusher, more valuable to this team than Saquon. Andrew Thomas, more valuable. John Michael Schmitz is the center, more valuable. Daniel Jones is the quarterback. Yes, more valuable. Running backs, past the age of 27. I'm sorry. What Saquon was asking for, look, they should be getting paid. But Saquon did turn down a much more lucrative deal, and they wanted to franchise tag Daniel Jones. They couldn't get that done. They tagged Saquon. The rest is history. He's off to free agency. I have hated the way that the team has looked with Saquon, even when they've played their best games. It's felt like an anomaly because of the way that the Maras, and you can see there are multiple Maras on the in the Giants organization. Chris Mara, and then I'm forgetting it's like O'Donnell or something, one of the guys on player personnel who's the nephew of John Mara. These are all guys that are like being the two guys below are being considered to maybe take over once Mara retires, right? Is essentially the organization's head.
Tim McDonald,
Tim
the
McDonald.
Director of Player Personnel.
So
he's John's nephew.
John's nephew, and then Chris Mara is also involved in the team from a scouting perspective. Like the fact that there's still this idea that we need to build a team around Saquon. How are we going to get our offense going in this way or that way? Well, you should update your models to play in an offensive way that is not reliant on a running back that is at the tail end of his 20s, and you do that through creative, open passing game concepts, which Dable should thrive in. He knows how to get guys open, and I really just think the offense is going to be way more efficient with getting Wandale in space, Malik Neighbors taking the top off the defense, Jalen Hyatt taking the top off the defense, and then you can have Darius Slayton doing intermediate stuff. I really do think that the Giants are a more explosive offense without Saquon being the focal point because it forces them to be a more diverse team.
Well, and as you see in the, I think also as you see in the show, like I was explaining just kind of how Shane comes across. Dable, I also like Dable. On one hand, also similarly with his own psychosis, is like he's coming in like in the dad mode, showing him like on and off specs. So like he's like looking at a PFF to Shane, and Shane's like, okay, I got it.
Yeah.
I need to work. But then Mara, as you're saying, is like Mara's. It very much seems like both Shane and Dable are not only very communicative and open about what they're looking for with the team, and I think being somewhat clear-minded about free agency, even just in the sense of who they can really feasibly target and sign in terms of the Illuminor signing on the offensive line, as well as the Burns trade, but also even like looking for another second, John Runyon and the other second, or maybe another secondary running back like Devin Singletary,
who you could. I just loved how excited Dayball was. I mean, their mantra is tough. It's tough, dependable, smart, or something like that. I forget the exact. Devin Singletary is one of the smartest running backs in the NFL. He's so consistent. He knows exactly. He has
and for
great
his
vision.
Stature too. He's
not
a
even the
small
best
guy.
athlete, but his vision is better than Saquon's. He finds holes more consistently better than Saquon. Saquon needs to go outside the line sometimes because his vision in between the tackles is not that good, despite his athleticism.
And the Saquon thing is super interesting to me because it's I think the entire discourse around Saquon in the show is symptomatic of some of the dynamics, which is Shane, I think, to certain people was willing to sort of acknowledge like it's too rich of a deal. Like he was willing to sort of be like, do we really want to put this much money into a running back kind of getting to be on the wrong side of his either his late 20s or if it's a longer term deal, his 30s, and knowing also, I think with the implication there being too that Saquon was also not a pick from his tenure, so he also
that's not how he wants to run an offense.
So he also doesn't feel. So Shane also
Dable.
doesn't. Shane and Dable, I'm sure, but Shane definitely, I think, under the surface was also like, I don't feel nearly as beholden to Saquon as the Maras may.
Right.
And the Maras are coming in, as you're saying, more in terms of like his popularity, the marketability, what he sentimentally means to the Giants, as opposed to what the on-field product would look like with a returning, 28, 29-year-old Saquon Barkley.
I mean, let's be okay. If you have sentimentality for Saquon Barkley as a Giants fan, I don't know if you're too young to have remembered those two Super Bowl runs, but I associate him with losing football. So I have no sentimentality about Saquon Barkley. Two, I think that Joe Shane and Brian Daboll understand that having a running back that you feature that often does not create multiplicity within your offense. If you have a Singletary who you can rely on to get to have the vision, to get the cheap yards, to 4 or 5 yard runs, and then you can have Tyrone Tracy and or you could have Eric Gray as more of a power back, and then Tyrone Tracy and Wandale doing speed sweeps and things like that. That is more valuable and cheaper than having one back in Saquon Barkley. I like that offense, how it looks more than him being the one offensive producer. That's the problem, is because when you pay a guy like that, you have to feed him. And when you feed him, it makes your offense less multiple. It makes your offense more predictable. That is why I'm thrilled that he's gone. He's much more better served as a complementary piece on a team that's already built in the Eagles. Fine. He can have his stupid little revenge. I don't care, right? I'm sick of his stupid Boy Scout, like, I'm Mr. Perfect, but so insecure. He's reading on Twitter, replying to random accounts. Get over it, bro. He's so soft. Like he's just ridiculous. So I'm so thrilled to be done with him, but it still concerns me that I see Shane and Dable looking to the future about how to build a team in the modern NFL, not being reliant on Saquon in that way. But the Maras still having that philosophy. It's like the offense was shitty the whole time he was here. And I get that like the blame falls on the quarterback for the most part, but it's also because of the way that the offense was forced to be structured because of this stupid ass pick.
And it's a slightly tired way of looking at things in terms of that type of roster construction or vision for the team, but also the fact that it's coming from like the dynastic leadership of the ownership group, not the new front office, and B, Mara's not in as far as I can see fully putting his thumb on the scale, but you can tell with how he's talking to Shane and in that room that he's basically like, we should do every single thing we can to keep him.
Yeah.
Whereas one, clearly in the conversations we see Shane having, he's never really on that page.
No.
And B, in his conversations with Saquon's agent and Saquon himself, you can tell that
Saquon does not like Shane.
That's the thing, is like you can tell that Saquon A is not interested in returning, and B feels like he was disrespected in a way, which whether that's right or wrong.
No,
whether
fair
that's
for
right
him.
or wrong,
I mean, I don't think he's the kind of player that has the ability to like make that kind of request, but he was a high draft pick. He's a great athlete, and the Giants were shit and didn't do that was a problem with the pre-Shane era. They screwed Saquon.
And whether it's whether it's right or wrong, you could tell in the phone call where he literally is like, I've told you where I'm at, so I don't really think we need to be talking anymore. And Shane, like, obviously tries to be professional to this like guy who is obviously like he's sort of this guy's boss in a way. And he's like, okay, totally fine. Like,
yeah.
And you can also tell with the agent, like, he's sort of giving him a number and a number of years, but that's sort of just to kind of give him an answer.
Right.
It's not really necessarily something that he's, I don't think, actually considering.
I think Shane was going through the motions. You can tell how that's different than how, we'll just also say this, I was surprised by how much, and maybe you missed this because you didn't see the last episode, it seemed like the quarterback that Dable wanted was Jaden Daniels, which does not shock me given the fact that I know that Drake May has rawness, right? But it seemed like they still liked May. He was great on the whiteboard. He seems like he has the smarts, and they were going to still trade up to, like, they made it clear, and they go through how they told Daniel Jones that because, hey, you've been injured a bunch of times, you know, like, we've got to make our stamp on this. And I wonder what they're going to try to do. You know, Josh Allen, I just saw. Josh Allen is currently number 15 in annual average for quarterback pay. This will be a good way for us to talk about Tua and Jordan Love. But I wonder when someone who's dating a celebrity named Haley Steinfeld gets a little disgruntled
But living in
this Western New York, and maybe wants to go get reunited with his buddy who he had his most productive years with on a team that has Malik Neighbors. Just a thought. Just putting that out there. But anyway, so...
But I mean, interesting.
They seem to love Neighbors and love Marv. They made it clear if Marv or Neighbors are there at 6, they're going to take them. If not, they trade down. They liked Odunze too, but they thought they could get him at 9. And they had you missed this in the episode, but they had a trade in place with Chicago because Chicago wanted Odunze so badly that they were going to go up with the Giants and flip-flop.
Oh, interesting.
Potentially, but they also basically had good intel that it seemed like Alt was definitely into the Chargers, and so that Neighbors or Marvin Harrison, but whoever the Cardinals didn't take would be available at 6.
It was remarkable to see what I really like about the show is seeing these sort of internal processes that we're not always privy to, like the combine interviews, as well as or like the prospect, you know, the top 20, but whatever you call them, the draft process interviews, how they kind of test these guys or what they ask them. But also, I like that. I loved seeing like all of the different other personnel guys who I'm not as familiar with, what their affects and personalities are like, and what their kind of roles are, and what kind of information they're dealing with and talking about, and when they make these personnel decisions, like strategy meetings and stuff. But also, I liked seeing, because it kind of goes to show you obviously how much they prepare for the press that they're gonna get. I just love seeing, like, you know, their media consultant kind of like brief.
Oh, that part was cool.
Yeah, like here's what you should be saying. You know, Xavier McKinney seems frustrated on Twitter, like, so they're probably gonna ask you about that. Like, I just thought it was funny. Like, Shane's like, I don't even really listen or talk, like, hear or watch any of these things, and he's like, that's why we pay you to watch and hear all of it, right? Like, he needs to be briefed so he can do that, but it's not like, it's certainly not nearly as off the cuff as any of them would even make it appear,
right?
In terms of how they address the press on these things.
And my favorite part of the show by far was seeing Dable interact with these potential players.
Yeah,
players
definitely.
On the team. I mean, that's why he has, I think, an A- rating from the NFLPA. Like, the players really like him. That's part of why I think the Giants really should stick with him, because he has a way with players.
And he gets more out of teams that are not particularly talented. Like, it was almost to the team's detriment that Tommy DeVito won 3 games behind center for the Giants.
Don't I know it?
Like, in terms of, like, if that was actually for draft stock, like, it would have been a backfiring effort.
Yes.
But like, I think to his credit, they were still able to win games with rosters that were much inferior in some capacities to some of these teams that they even played. I'm not even saying that they were amazing teams. I would just mean, like, another coach with Tommy DeVito behind center with some of the, and also with the injuries they had at receiver, like, that would not have been as competitive. No way. At least in my view. And just before we move on, I just loved I loved seeing the different personalities of the top 3 receivers and what could potentially obviously be like a fully, like, generational class of wide receiver talent. Seeing how, you know, Malik Neighbors interacted, Marvin Harrison Jr. interacted, and Rome Odunze interacted. Like, Neighbors was just very clearly, despite being a little bit mild-mannered, he made it very clear just, like, how uber ultra competitive he is, and then was very honest about being like, I hate losing.
Yeah.
I hate losing, and it makes me really upset and ruins my day. And also, if I'm not being involved in getting our team to win, I'm upset about it.
Yeah.
And Dable was like, great, love to hear that. Love to hear you're a football psycho like me. Obviously, we want to, like, you know, sublimate some of those urges so you're not getting really pissed off on the sideline or anything like that. But I love to hear that. Marvin Harrison Jr. I think seems a little bit of like a weird guy. Like he kind of very much was like, I'm not preparing for the combine. I'm preparing to play football, so I'm not testing.
Yeah.
Like hope that
I
makes
mean, Neighbors
sense.
didn't test either, but yeah, it seems like
It
Marvin.
almost seemed like Marvin had more of like an answer to be like, it's not worth it for me to test.
I think we
You know
talked
what
about this a few
yeah.
episodes ago, but yeah, I think it's because his dad was in the NFL, so he has this weird, this
pedigree,
anti-agent, I mean,
Right.
which in part is good, like screw you to the
Right.
billionaire class, but I wonder how much of it is in his own interest.
And then Odunze could be on television.
Oh yeah,
Like,
he's the biggest like leader. He's gonna be such a leader in that locker
like
room.
even I know sometimes like some people I think kind of like blanch at the intangible stuff, but I think if you're a coach and you talk to a guy like that and he is that like driven, well he's clear in his communication. He is like all he is focused on is like, I'm ready for the season. I'm ready to do literally whatever you want me to do for this team to succeed. I don't care what happens or how many targets I get, what my target share is or whatever. He's like, all I am is about the team. I'd be like, I don't only want this guy on my team. I want him to like run for office.
Yeah, no,
Like,
he'll be amazing for Chicago. It's why they wanted him so badly.
But yes, quarterback contracts. It is especially about what we're going to get to here with the Tua and Jordan Love extensions. Not to say nothing of the Trevor Lawrence and Joe Burrow extensions that have come before this. It is even more astonishing to hear where Josh Allen ranks.
I mean,
in
I think
AAV.
it depends on the guarantees, but I'm seeing anywhere between 12th and 15th Josh Allen is in terms of quarterback contracts at this moment. Tua got a 4-year extension. It's a 5-year total contract, $212.4 million. Now, of that, the guarantees are only fully guaranteed $93.1 million, but the practical guarantee is $147.171. That basically means that 147 of it is guaranteed. It'll be in between there, but it's a real like substantive deal. I mean, his average AAV that drives it up a little bit because not all of that is guaranteed, and it really is essentially a 3-year commitment with a lot of the guarantees bunched into those first 3 years. But he gets a $42 million signing bonus, then $25 million $25 million fully guaranteed next year, $54 million fully guaranteed in 2026, and then they could potentially cut him in 2027 when only $20 million of it is guaranteed for injury, but $31 million overall in that year. So this is an insane contract, in my view, an absolutely insane contract. You guys know how I feel about Tua. Well, let's get to it in a sec, because let's also talk about Jordan Love, who right after Tua signed his deal, he upped it and got a 4-year, $220 million deal with a $70 million signing bonus that's staggered out within 3 separate payments across the rest of this year. So next year, he'll only have $11.9 million fully guaranteed. The year after, $49.9 million guaranteed for injury at signing. 2020, that's 2026, I should say. 2027, $41.9 million, $20 million guaranteed for injury. So that's $55 million per year in new money. The base salary, as I mentioned, is lower than that based on like the small extension that he got. But yeah, it's a better deal. The signing bonus makes up a lot more of that, but it's $100.8 million fully guaranteed at signing versus the $93.1 million fully guaranteed at signing for Tua. And the practical guarantee is also larger, $140.3 million guaranteed. Now, both of these contracts really speak to where the NFL has gone as it relates to the quarterback position. It's basically next guy up gets the next best deal because there's so much money coming in and the starting quarterback position is considered such a premium.
And
now,
as we saw in the draft,
yeah,
because if you want a cost-controlled option, as well as just it's wanting the cost-controlled option, which is why obviously even like Bo Nix goes in the first round when maybe in another draft he wouldn't have. Same for to Denver. Same thing with Michael Penix to Atlanta. Even with having the expensive QB option on the roster, which obviously we discussed at length around the draft, it just goes to show you, one, a cheap quarterback is kind of one of the premium so-called assets in the NFL, but two, very few people, because they see who is successful in this league in terms of teams, no one wants to be left off the quarterback carousel.
Yeah.
Everyone wants to make sure that they're sitting down with like, oh, we have this guy at quarterback. Like,
And
it seems like you're dead in the water almost if you don't have like an option, a capital O option at quarterback.
And the general managers think it buys them more time because Chris
definitely.
Greer
For sure.
drafted Tua. You know who went after him? Justin Herbert. You know
Right.
who's worthy of this contract? Not Tua, Justin Herbert. You know who would have been doing better in Miami? With Tyreek Hill and frickin' Jalen Waddle with that rocket arm, and Mike McDaniel wouldn't have to work so hard to scheme guys open. He could just jam it in there with that rocket arm, Justin Herbert. So this is another general manager doubling down on a decision, and that's kind of what happens sometimes in these situations. Now with Jordan Love, look, he was just, this is a big gamble, but they really believe. And I understand believing. He has shown last year he had a bit of a lull kind of midway through the season, but he had some real sparks and showed wow throws, the kind of arm talent that is famous for the quarterbacks up in Green Bay. Now he's not Aaron Rodgers. No one is, honestly. I mean, there may never be a more talented thrower of the football in the history of the sport. And I'm including Mahomes and Josh Allen in that. And but yeah, I mean, it's remarkable to see them give him this extension without so much of a sample size, but still I would feel way more comfortable as a Green Bay fan than I would if I were a Miami fan. I mean, there's more body of work for Tua, and the results are not that good. Like last year, he had a phenomenal statistical year, but the years before that, he struggled to stay healthy, concussions, issues, and even last year, he got fat towards the end of the year. This was, well, I shouldn't say fat, but he gained weight in Miami. When you're running around, he gained like 20 to 30 pounds, not apparently of muscle, but of fat. That was what people were saying, that he was struggling to be mobile. I don't know how that happens.
Well, I think
and he couldn't throw in the elements. And you're going to give him like one of the richest contracts. The guy can't throw in winter.
The tough thing I think with Tua is, as we saw in the Chiefs playoff game, as you're saying, his difficulties in playing in weather that isn't kind of the weather he's used to playing in, i.e. either, Miami or Alabama, which also has a hot climate as well, and also being from Hawaii as well.
When you have to drive the ball,
right.
He can't do that.
And the other thing is too, as we've seen in 2 seasons, I would say 2 seasons now. I know it was different 2 seasons ago because Tua was not healthy going into in the playoffs, but we've seen the Mike McDaniel offense with Tua at the helm completely eviscerate teams in the first 8 or so weeks of the season, only to then be sort of figured out in terms of how the defenses can kind of key in and predict some of the less predictable motion or kind of run game or pass game packages that McDaniel is so famous for. And part of the reason I think that makes it so tough to project this to be successful for Miami is that we haven't seen the counterpunch from the Dolphins in this instance. We haven't seen the counterpunch, which every team sort of has when their stuff gets figured out. The other issue that I have, and I'm not comparing McDaniel, I'm comparing more the team of dynamic, is that of when the Arizona Cardinals were coached by Cliff Kingsbury, where they were sort of on fire, and then because of the lack of adaptation or the lack of the personnel being able to adapt along with the scheme, they stopped being successful. Yep. And none of these concerns, I would say, have fully gone away outside of Tua with the Dolphins. And what I mean by that is they have not materially improved the offensive line, despite, I would say, still their best offensive lineman being Teron Armstead, who is getting closer to 30, or it might even be over 30 at this point, and he can't stay on the field. All they did was sign Aaron Brewer, who is a decent player, but that's all they did to improve this offensive line that was really struggling last year.
Let alone what happened with the defense.
And the defense, with the injuries that they have, and losing their coordinator, too, having to start again with another coordinator.
New coordinator lost their best defensive player, arguably, in Christian Wilkins, and then they lost their 2 pass rushers to injury in Jalen Phillips and Bradley Chubb. So Tua this is an article from prior to that game against the Chiefs, where they lost when the Chiefs went on to win the Super Bowl, obviously last year. The Dolphins or Tua is 6-13 in temperatures under 70 degrees, 0-4 in under 40 degrees with a 57% passer rating, and that is prior to that game. 0-4. Well, now he's 0-5 in games under 40 degrees. So why are we paying a quarterback to do that? You're just hoping on a prayer that in the AFC you don't have to go to Buffalo, you don't have to go to Kansas City,
which they did have to go. Cincinnati, Pittsburgh. I mean, obviously
Baltimore,
we'll see about the Steelers,
probably
but
at that time of the year.
Yes, for sure.
I mean, these are all Cleveland. That's another team that's won in the playoffs. They're praying on a whim that they get to go to Houston for a playoff game, or that they win their division in a division that that now has, look, Aaron Rodgers and the Jets are still going to be a threat, and the Buffalo Bills with Josh Allen.
And the thing with Tua there too, that I would compare, because I actually didn't realize this, but I guess Tua's only a few months older than Love, but Love I think seems like a younger quarterback because he obviously was in the wings for a few years in his career with Aaron Rodgers and not really playing. However, even with the small sample size, I would say a few things. One, Jordan Love, despite having a bit of a rocky, I think, first 6 to 8 weeks of the season, ultimately then started playing so well in the second half of the season that people, I think, were almost giving him some down ballot MVP love, even though obviously love, pun intended, because of how well he was playing in the second half of the season. I don't think they actually give it to him, just in the sense that he had improved so much and been not only just playing better, but being some of the reasons why they were winning games, this incredibly young offensive core in Green Bay. They fought the 49ers in the playoffs.
Yeah.
They almost beat them, if not for a few boneheaded mistakes from a young quarterback.
Jordan Love almost drove down the field and won that game if he didn't throw a stupid pass, and he immediately said something after the game, owned it, was disgusted with himself, and Matt LaFleur defended him because he was apparently really hard on himself. It was his first season as a starter, and he still looked phenomenal, almost beat as the 7 seed the 49ers,
the NFC champions.
And I think they could have had a real shot of going into Detroit and beating Detroit with that defense,
especially with how they looked against the Niners. I certainly don't think it's impossible. And also,
which is, by the way, how Aaron Rodgers won his only Super Bowl as the last seed in the NFC.
Right.
Yeah. So I thought that could have been a really exciting time.
100%. And so I guess what I'm saying when I compare these contracts, not even to one-to-one compare Love and Tua, it's just even in this season that Love was starting, I've seen more high-level ceiling-raising play, highlight-level play from Jordan Love, where I feel like he is the reason, he is the fulcrum of opening the window higher for the Packers. Right. Whereas Tua, there are positives to Tua's game in the sense, but they're not positives that excite me. And what I mean by that is,
of course, there's positives,
but through the scheme and through how McDaniel composes his offense, it's a lot of stuff that, as you're saying, guys, not only because of their incredible physical profiles in Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, are incredibly wide open, but they're also in throws over the middle of the field, or their throws that kind of are extremely, I would say, buoyed by the incredible stellar yard after the catch ability that his receivers have. I don't feel a lot of the time as if Tua is making throws or if impacting the offense where I feel like he is leaving his own impact, or that he is the one sort of when the game is on the line or it's an extremely high pressure situation, he is going the extra mile or going the extra few feet or whatever the case may be to impact the game, where Tua Tagovailoa is winning the game for the Dolphins. It's just my perspective, and it's somewhat anecdotal, and I think some of the data does probably bear this out. But for me, it's like I just don't see that in Tua the way I even see it in Jordan Love, and I have way less of a sample size with Jordan Love. And I think it just goes to show how I feel about the players and also what I expect or what I want to see from a quarterback to win games that I'm seeing from guys like Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, even maybe Lamar a little bit less in the playoffs, but I think that is still yet to be seen. But very much so, Mahomes, Burrow, Allen, that I'm seeing those things in. I'm not seeing that in Tua, and I haven't yet.
Oh, come on. All right. Yeah, you're not gonna. I mean, let's be real.
No, certainly. I'm not even necessarily.
No, I'm not saying
that.
you are.
I more mean in the sense of, like, I wouldn't think this is the guy that we should stake our long-term future on, and not just that, potentially leverage not having more financial flexibility to make the team better.
Well, okay. Yeah, no, I'm tired. So I'm just I just want to be like, can people just watch the throws? Can people just watch the way the ball comes out of people's hands? I mean, it's really not that hard. It's just not that hard to evaluate this. Jordan Love has the capacity to be a top 10 quarterback for the rest of his career. Tua will never, ever, ever, ever be a top 10 quarterback in elevating his team on skills alone. Ever. Ever, 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 ever. Okay? Ever. He can't drive the football. That is something that you need as a starting quarterback. He can't throw in weather. That is something you need as a starting NFL quarterback to be a top elite player. So I just think it's insane to double down, triple down on this and give him another contract. But it is what it is. Now, let's wrap up. I'm tired. You want to wrap up? What are you doing?
I'm patrolling the chat.
Oh.
I'm being the chat warden.
Hi, chat warden.
For both just for giggles, but also to lay the long and hard ban hammer on anyone insulting me.
Oh, good.
Or us.
Like the stream, chat. Like the stream if you want to insult Bradley. Mind pillow guy. Emma, no politic here. No politic. Or Jordan Love earned that contract. Will from Indiana also want to shout out the humanity Palestinian athletes showed during this time. It really feels triumphant to see. Also, my bad. Too bad my IU girl, Lily King, came so close to the podium but just fell short. Oh, well, still more to come. Absolutely. Cedar Colada, can you get Holly Anderson for a college football preview? Ooh, that could be interesting.
Oh, yeah. She's great.
El Canipcion, a Palestinian man, won the UFC match recently, and the final IM of the day, longtime friend of the show, said, despite all the awful politics in grappling, Joe Rogan, etc., some of the best people I've met in the grappling judo community, or have been in the judo grappling community. Also, the only U.S. Olympic judo gold medalist goes to a woman by the name of Kayla Harrison, who has an incredible story. Okay, we will look that up. We will see you. Well, actually, I'm off Monday of next week. So we will see you the following week. We'll get back into... We're in the slow time, but we'll get back into a regular schedule.
And it's coming fast. We only have, I think, a few more weeks, I would say, of the so-called off-season for us. Where we're kind of, pursuing more odds and ends as opposed to, the real red meat that we have with football. But it's coming soon. We're getting to August next week. So things will really be heating up soon, which I cannot wait for.
Bye-bye.
Bye.